Coming up on this week's Royal Exclusive, has the King's patience finally snapped over Prince Harry's chaotic UK return? The truth behind Prince Andrew's infamous Pizza Express alibi, plus why Prince William says his dad hates football. Welcome to the show. We start with the ultimate royal rejection. Palace aides say the King's patience has been tested beyond endurance after a dithering Prince Harry missed a strict deadline to stay at Buckingham Palace, sparking a furious briefing war over whether the Duke was set up to fail. And to add to insult to injury, Harry had to endure a crushing defeat in his lawsuit against the Mail, leaving his reputation and possibly finances in ruins. Plus, Andrew's infamous Pizza Express alibi is back in the headlines after an extraordinary investigation into whether he really was in Woking all those years ago. Are we any closer to knowing the truth? We'll also look at how Prince William has dropped his dad right in it ahead of England's massive World Cup clash. I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me to unpack it all are Royal Editor at The Times, Kate Mansey, and host of podcast Unfiltered, Kinsey Schofield. Welcome to you both. Look, guys, finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of chat, the circus has rolled into town. Within a few short hours, Harry had been accused of causing the King's patience to snap, and he lost what is ultimately a humiliating £50 million court case. For many years, we respected Harry as Captain Harry Wales, when he served in the army. Surely now he is just becoming Captain Chaos. Is this chaos and drama that we are seeing just in a few short hours of you arriving, all the drama, the noise, is that just what we now have to expect? Is that just part of the deal for every time Harry comes to these shores?
Well, I don't think that Harry thought that it would reflect so poorly on him this visit. I'm under the impression that he thought that this was going to be his redemption tour, and he had all of these engagements lined up because he wanted positive headlines. But the reality is he just can't get out of his own way. And I think that he acts without thinking ultimately about the consequences. And you ask yourself, do you have the right team around you that walks you through every possibility? If you do this is the way that it might unfold for you, and you might embarrass yourself. But it does seem like chaos continues to follow him, and I think we've seen him trying to rebuild his brand over the last 6 to 12 months between Ukraine, the letter he wrote in the New Statesman regarding anti-Semitism in the UK. He wants to be taken as a serious character. And then a week like this happens and he loses all authority, all credibility. And a judge says, I didn't trust your testimony. And that wreaks havoc on that.
Well, we'll get on to the Buckingham Palace farce, and it is a farce, whether he was going to stay there or not. And we'll get on to, the repercussions of losing this case. But Kate, before we do that, I remember, I was looking at what's happening to Harry in the last couple of hours or the last couple of days. I remember a couple of years ago, you wrote a story that the palace were dubbed Andrew and Harry the same nickname. What was it?
It was Dukes of Hazard. That's the name that they had for Andrew and Harry, because hazard, chaos, followed both of them. And they were the two big problems that were pointed out to me by courtiers as, big kind of hurdles for the king during his reign, and big kind of, alarm signals flash every time their names were mentioned. But to your point about, do we expect this sort of chaos every time Harry comes? Well, yes, we do, because I think what we've seen, and people I'm speaking to and you're speaking to at the palace, I think it's a pattern of behaviour. Harry announces he's going to come for weeks beforehand. There's briefings from his camp about what's going to happen. Maybe the children will come. He wants to bring the children. Then we have the familiar row over security, despite the fact that he lost his legal battle to have automatic right to UK police security. Last year in the Court of Appeal, it always seems to be a kind of a pressing, and it's always presented, isn't it, as a kind of an urgent and pressing issue, despite the fact that he does have security, albeit on a case-by-case basis. Now, it does seem to be that every time he comes, palace courtiers just get more and more weary about it. And I think, the public do too, because they sort of think, well, here we go again.
Here we go again. Let's break down the Buckingham Palace scenario. How hard can it be seriously, this is a vast building, okay, albeit it has staff and you've got the complications of the King and Harry, but for weeks we were told that the offer had been made from the palace, from the King, for Harry to stay there, and that he would ultimately accept. But it seemed to be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the scenario was the deadline was Friday. On Saturday morning, he said to the palace he didn't want to stay there. Then on Saturday night, he changed his mind. I mean, how can this go so badly wrong? Guys, just to be able to get a room at Buckingham Palace.
It's a catastrophic kind of communication breakdown, isn't it? I mean, between father and son.
Do you not think it's a control issue where Harry wants to tell people at the very last minute because he doesn't like giving his itinerary? He doesn't like for people. He's afraid that they'll leak what's going on, so he's in control if he holds on to this until the very last minute, and then I saw your article on Saturday about Harry not getting his Ravik security, and that seemed to be when the spiral began, the leaks about, well, now I'm not bringing the wife and the kids. And I think that there was a tug of war between Harry and his security team, who probably said, look, we're going to sit you down and the truth is, there's no safer place in the world for you to be than Buckingham Palace. And I think that's when he finally changed his tune and said, well, fine, I guess I'll stay there. But, I mean, what a wild ride.
I think people will think, come on, it's a huge palace. Surely the King can, dust off a few dust sheets. OK, there's building work going on. There's this big £369 million resurfacing programme going on. We've been in there recently. Huge parts of the palace still off limits because there's building work taking place and people with hard hats working away. But, there is room for Harry. So there were a couple of things going on, wasn't there? First of all, the King lost patience. He gave him a deadline. That offer had been open for weeks, and Harry hadn't had the courtesy to tell his father. The King said, you've got to decide by the end of the week, so presumably end of business hours on Friday. He comes in late on Saturday, first of all saying he doesn't want to stay, then changing his mind. And the King clearly, as you've written, snapped and lost patience and said, we can't be messing the staff around because as a courtesy to staff who then had been stood down, he wasn't about to get people to ring up and say, oh, by the way, can you make those rooms available? There was the added complexity, of course, of the fact that the day that Harry wanted to stay at the palace, he was going to be receiving that judgment, which I'm sure we'll come on to, of his case against Associated Newspapers Limited, who publish a Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. And I think that, there were a lot of minds within the palace that was concentrating their minds as to what would he say when that judgment came out? Would he be broadcasting from within a room at Buckingham Palace? And given that he hadn't made the deadline, they weren't about to extend it on that basis.
Well, there was lots at play, as you talked there, Kate. We'll get on to the case in a minute. But it was discussing earlier, it's classic behaviour from Harry. He wanted to leave it up to the last minute. But also classic behaviour from the King. He wants things to be organised. He's got staff that he wants to be places. And he probably just gets to the stage and goes, well, I've got so many balls in the air. I've got staff here. I need to go to Highgrove, to Sandringham, to Buckingham Palace. I've just run out. And I'll give you the quote. This was a royal aide, said that the King's patience snapped. And that sounds like the King, to be fair. He said he wants to be a loving father and grandfather, but that was being tested beyond endurance. He was not willing to be pushed around nor indulge a constant state of, back to the word again, chaos.
Well, and I can tell you that my understanding from the audience online is relief. People were thrilled that the King took this stance, and some, finally saying, or some saying he finally had a backbone. It's rude. It's rude to wait to the last minute to say what you're going to do. And also you have to keep in mind, I know that they have a lot of resources, but for the last few weeks, the palace had been organizing a staff to support a family of 4 plus an entourage. And then here comes Harry saying, no, it's just going to be me. Well, they would have to re-strategize his entire stay, along with calling up the chef again or making sure that the food and beverage are there to entertain one person and a few of his security guards. But it just threw everything into chaos. It just threw everything up in the air. And, I think that that's unfair to do to them at the last minute.
Do you think that Harry was triggered by the fact that he was offered the spare room?
Was he?
Well, that was a joke.
Or was that a joke? Well, if it wasn't as big as Williams, I loved it. I like your jokes.
Well, let's move on to the media case. Look, it's quite tricky. Obviously, you know, he's sued lots of media organisations. He's sued mine. He's sued the Mirror newspaper. He's won in the past. This was, I think it was an 11-week trial. He came over and gave evidence. This was against the Daily Mail group. He lost all 57 claims of illegal news gathering. Actually, there was other claimants, Elton John and David Furnish. And,
I think he was 14, right?
Yeah, so I think he was just 14. I think. But look, there was attacks on journalists. It went on for ages. It was incredibly stressful for everybody. He's now this week in London asking for press to turn up and cover his events. I mean, what's your take on this situation, guys?
Well, I mean, this was a huge defeat for Harry because the judge came back, didn't he, on Tuesday, just as Harry was doing his first public appearance in association with his Invictus Games. And almost exactly the same timing, within minutes of him appearing there at Chatham House in London, the judge handed down, you know, the verdict, which was that Harry and the 6 other claimants had comprehensively lost every single point.
Do you think he was expecting that? I think he was expecting to be here and get a couple of the stories in and get a couple of wins.
I think he was expecting to win on a couple of points. Mm-hmm. I do. At which point he would have claimed a victory. Mm-hmm. But it was such a comprehensive defeat that I think it really seemed to knock the wind out of his sails. We saw him stand up and start to address the room.
So bearing that in mind, the fact that, you know, the whole run-up to this thing is chaos. He can't bring his family, or says he can't bring his family to central London. He's caused his dad's patience to snap. I mean, how is he going to cope for the rest of the week with this everything just turning into a nightmare?
Well, it's not a great start, is it? Let's put it that way. I mean, he had been planned to be here with the Duchess of Sussex as well. Now, she wasn't seen at all, was she, at any point during that 11-week trial? Harry himself gave evidence in January. And, you know, it all unfurled over the course of a few weeks at the High Court in London. She didn't come to support him. She doesn't seem to be anywhere so far in the UK that we've seen her so far. The question is whether she'll want to be associated with this action at all. And given such he's had such a defeat, I don't think it's good for her brand, is it?
This is really good, really good point. Do you think, because we're still up in the air now, I'll check the Sussex WhatsApp group quickly and find out. No, still no update on whether she's coming over. But we still don't know, but do you think that she will want to distance herself now from what is turning out to be a very difficult week for her husband?
Well, I predicted that we might see her if he won, and we would not see her if he didn't win, because I don't think she wants to be on the arm of a loser. But to your point, she does disappear when times are tough. When Harry was when Harry became the butt of the joke in the United States over Spare, and Jimmy Kimmel was mocking him on his Late Show, Meghan disappeared. She disappeared throughout the promotion of Spare. When Harry was tearing into the British royal family during his BBC interview right after the original Ravik verdict, where's Meghan Markle? When times are tough, she is MIA. And so I don't believe we will see her throughout this visit, because there's a pattern there of her disappearing when things are hard. When things are hard for her, he's front and center, trying to protect her, going on Oprah Winfrey, talking about the Me You Can't See documentary, talking about how Meghan was crying herself to sleep. He's very protective of her, but she does not give him the same, shield.
How do you think the royal family and the king are going to react to this? There's 2 things I want to ask you about, Kate. Money, but also his statement that he made, to, basically criticising the king's
court.
Court. But if it's going to cost him a lot of money. Potentially, people are talking 50 million, but I think there might be something in there saying that the costs are going to be limited or split.
And it depends on how much the insurer will actually cover. And the insurer could look at some of those statute of limitations and say, this should have never been brought to court in the first place, so we refuse to actually honour this.
Well, there's always a clause, isn't there, with insurance?
Yes.
And if you take out insurance, they will want to know that, the lawyers did the very best due diligence they could before bringing the case forward.
And the judge specifically says some of this stuff shouldn't have been presented to me in the first place. So the insurers absolutely could say, no, we're not going to cover that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a big chunk of change, isn't it? Because the Daily Mail group is suggesting that it's £50 million. Now, we understand that Hacked Off has a big pot of cash to help fund some of these litigations against the press. So how much of that they will cover, we don't know. It's hard to figure out quite how wealthy Harry is. Obviously, he had a big inheritance from his late mother, and if that had been invested wisely, that would be a lovely nest egg for him. We know that when they bought the house in Montecito, they have a mortgage on that house. It wasn't bought outright. We don't know quite how successful Meghan's brand has been because the accounts aren't published. Ditto Archwell Media and all their other arms of their financial freedom that they went off to find in America. So it's hard to see, but I mean, in terms of, Harry as a brand, it's not helpful because this is the week, Invictus Games is such a feather in his cap. It's something that really, it's very hard to criticise because he's done a brilliant job with that. It's been going over 10 years. And next year it's going to be hosted in Birmingham in 2027. This was supposed to be a big hurrah for it. Perhaps the Duchess would be by his side. Maybe the children would come and meet the King, but that all seems to have unravelled so quickly. And not just because of the High Court defeat, but because of the sort of, like we discussed, the toing and froing over where he would stay.
It's the noise that he brings drowns out any other messaging that the King and the Queen and William have been out this week, or any messaging that he wants to do with his Invictus Games. His just general appearance and messing things up, that stops everything else being heard. Well, I think. But on the money, is there a danger that the King that you might have to ask his father to help out?
Well, based on what you're saying, I just want to stress. Dr. Sophie Shandaka has said everything you said, and Harry's currently being sued by Senabale. Am
I going to be sued for saying that?
No. My point is that Harry and Meghan are a distraction from the causes that they attach themselves to, that they even build and create. They've become this toxic entity that turns fundraisers away, that turns donations away. And, somebody seriously needs to have a come to Jesus with them and say, you need to behave by the book. But will he have to ask his dad for money? We know King Charles said he felt like an ATM, and he's refused to take, according to Robert Jobson, refused to take Harry's phone calls in the past because Harry's asked for money. I don't think that it'll go down that road, but I do think that you've made a very good point that when it comes to Invictus and other causes, the distraction that Harry and Meghan brings, it ultimately jeopardizes really great causes that are suffering.
Invictus Games must be, and I'm not going to speak for them, and I haven't asked them, but there must be people there sitting on for Invictus Games quite furious about this.
I will say I've heard it. I've heard it. I have heard that leadership at Invictus is very concerned about Meghan Markle's presence, that it becomes the Meghan Markle show. Why are you changing your outfits 3 or 4 times for a one-day visit? It seems like this is a catwalk for you while you've got injured veterans, that are competing and trying to show that there's life after such a traumatic event. I have heard that Invictus leadership is frustrated and stressed with the Sussexes.
What about the King? Do you think he's frustrated with the Sussexes? We just mentioned there about his statement that he did with Baroness Lawrence, where he accused it of a whitewash and basically criticised the court. How's he going to cope with this?
This is what they feared, wasn't it? That after the judgment, Harry would come out with something and it would threaten the King's constitutional role if Harry was delivering those sorts of statements against the King's courts, essentially, and the justice system from under a sovereign's roof within Buckingham Palace. Now, we remember last year when he lost his case against the Home Office in the Court of Appeal, he described it as good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, didn't he? So it's very hard for the King to he's put the King in a really difficult position with this statement because, if Charles meets him this week, he'll be linked to the case whether he wants it or not. The Daily Mail has a front page this morning saying vindicated. This won't be the last of it. They'll have a week of stories like this, I expect. So as this rumbles on, people are still talking about the case and what it means, not just for that particular newspaper group, but for the freedom of the press more generally. I think it's put Charles in a very difficult position as to how he goes about meeting Harry, if indeed he will meet him. But as we've said, I think that the King, friends of the King have said to me, he's a patient man, he's a compassionate man, But, he does, like everybody, has a limit. And you push him beyond that and you're going to find out about it.
Have we reached the limit, do you think, after what we've seen the last 24, 48 hours?
I think no. I think the king will always be very fond of Harry and he will always love his son and always want to see his grandchildren. I don't think that's going to change. But, like all parents and children, there are points when you just think, go to your room, I don't want to see you. I don't think this is the kind of royal equivalent, despite the fact that he's over 40 years old and says he wants to be reconciled with his father, and yet we have these briefing wars, essentially.
I almost feel more sorry, this is horrible to admit, but I almost feel more sorry for King Charles than Thomas Markle, because it feels like there is the constant tease of a potential reunion between Charles and his grandchildren, and with Thomas Markle, it's just cold. So I do kind of feel sorry for the king, because maybe he is anticipating seeing these children, maybe he is excited. Thomas Markle has no expectation whatsoever, and it might be humiliating for him too when things like this don't work out after the whole world has been hyping up this major, reconciliation.
But how hard can it be? I keep asking the same question. How hard can it be for they're both in London for 2 or 3 days? How hard can it be for them just to quietly go and have a cup of tea together?
I don't know. I've been trying to book you on my show for a while.
It seems to be very hard, though, doesn't it? I think it seems to be unnecessarily hard. And, people I know who I've been speaking to, sources saying that actually, if Harry truly wanted reconciliation, he really wanted to spend time with the king, who, as we know, is still still living with cancer, there might be a better way to go about these things. Private conversations behind the scenes, being courteous and saying, yes, Dad, I will take that kind offer of accommodation up, and getting back to him in due course. And I just think that there are better ways that Harry could go about it. But, as the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail said, he seems like he said, poor Harry, he seems very angry. And he sort of...
I've got the quote here, Kate, if you want. This is Paul Dacre, because I've got it here because I thought...
Yes, great, yeah.
He says, Prince Harry wrote a sad book which boasted about his killing of 25 Taliban, his drug-taking and in cringe-making detail how he lost his virginity. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not only the biscuit but the whole tin. Poor Harry... I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case. When I read that, it struck a chord because I thought, well, is he poor Harry? Has he kind of been misled in the last couple of years into the situation he is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem like somebody who really knows what he's doing. I think that's, he does look to be thrashing around. In his memoir, Spare, he talks about going to visit Sir Elton John and David Furnish at their home in France and meeting David Sherborne, who is the barrister.
By accident.
Yeah, who said, why don't you hire your own lawyer? And, this is a kind of light bulb moment for Harry, who had been at that point very frustrated by the palace not putting out his side of the story when they've seen reports in the press that he didn't like or that he said were false. So it's interesting because, the people that only really seem to have benefited from this very long, very costly litigation are the lawyers.
Poor Harry?
No. I mean, I've been watching the Prince and Princess of Wales this week. They look totally unbothered. They are thriving. And, I think it's a result of never complain, never explain. They're not weighed down by the tsunami of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and they ignore negative headlines. We don't see William fighting back on these new accusations that he's not going to move into Buckingham Palace one day. He has to live in a castle. There are all sorts of work-shy Willie. He just ignores it and continues to show up with a smile on his face. And I think that that's why the public is truly, attracted to this couple and adores this couple, because they stay above the fray. I think Harry wallows in the past, and it's one of the reasons why he's not thriving today, because he can't let go of things that happened 20 years ago.
Is there any way of Harry is he able to turn it around this week?
No. I don't think there's any way for him to turn it around. I mean, I've heard people say you can get the sympathetic headlines by going to Althorpe and visiting Diana's grave with the children. I mean, maybe you will get some. People magazine will lean into that. If he got a photograph with his father, that would absolutely change the narrative. But I don't think that that's a possibility.
I think Harry needs to concentrate on what Harry does best and what he does do best, which is focus on the charities, focus on the veterans. Here's somebody who served on the front line in Afghanistan on 2 tours of duty. That, you know, he's a tough guy, and stick to what you're good at, stick to that, move on with your life. And, you know, we're going to see him with children later on this week with Scottish Little Soldiers. And he'll be talking to children who are bereaved children of service personnel. And I just think he does do that really, really well. He can still do that. It's just when he starts railing against the press and railing against the establishment, you know, talking about stitch-ups, talking about whitewashes. It sounds strange because it sounds paranoid, it sounds strange, and it just completely devalues all the other work that he does. He needs to now, he's had his point, he's had his say in court, he needs to now accept it and move on, I think, and just focus on what people love him for.
Now, the Royals have been out this week. I don't know about you, Kate, but whenever, Kinsey, there's a little secret. Whenever it's announced that Harry's coming into town, we do get a flurry of op notes for the King, the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. And the King, I thought it was amazing on Monday with the King taking his jacket off, still wearing his tie, with a helmet on. I had to double check with the Rota reporter, didn't I?
We're zooming in, weren't we, going, is that the King?
Definitely the King riding around in a tank.
On the day that there'd been this briefing war, of course, about whether Harry would or would not stay in Buckingham Palace. And then you have Charles in a Challenger 2 battle tank being driven around looking like he's just walked off the Top Gun set or something like that. He just looked, you know, you couldn't make it up. I mean, for journalists, it was a fantastic juxtaposition, wasn't it?
I'd buy that 12-month calendar.
But also the Princess of Wales, I thought it was quite interesting that the kind of word came out about that the King's patients had been tested, and then she was with child patients, you know,
Royal Marsden.
at a hospital. And the thing about that this was the Evelina Children's Hospital. She was there to kind of help promote £100 million they need to build a new children's hospital. And this sort of talking about the noise, the noise that this is all being drowned out by Harry's noise. Do you think that that's a danger for the rest of the week?
I don't think he can drown that sort of thing out. I mean, all those operational notes for members of the royal family just were hitting all those top royal notes, weren't they, with their jobs this week? So we've had, like you say, the King on military manoeuvres, tick. Princess of Wales, you know, high-fiving and hugging little babies at a children's hospital, you know, looking $1 million. We've had more pictures coming out of the Princess of Wales's 3 Peaks Challenge, which is a remarkable achievement, wasn't it, given that just 2 years ago she was having chemotherapy. We've had the Queen in the Winnie the Pooh forest, talking about children's literacy, and it's all, you know, they're the kind of bread and butter royal jobs that they do so well. I don't know what you thought about that.
No, I mean, they still popped out to me, and I kind of realized what you were saying, the argument you were making. So I've gone out of my way to share those posts and to try to spread that message, because while I would love to sit and talk about the Princess of Wales for an hour, the reality is the news cycle won't allow it. Harry and Meghan are just way too loud. And you know, I felt like that was their intention in briefing everyone so soon, so early, about their intention to come out and bring the children. I mean, I think I did say to you that I thought it would only be Harry here the last time I was here. Yeah. But I wondered if it was a setup the entire time so that they could continue to stay in the victim category and the royal family can continue to be in the villain category that they have shoved them in. And I just don't think that that's fair. So I am trying to amplify those stories because I think that they're important.
Okay, yeah, we will try. We'll try our best. It's already a long week.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a very long week. Let's talk about your second Duke of Hazzard
Oh.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
He's been
He
back
is
in
not
the news.
hers, okay?
She came up with the phrase. It's
No, she
brilliant.
did.
Or
It
It wasn't me. It was
sources.
someone at the palace, and I thought that's brilliant. That's what they call him behind the
Yeah.
scenes. So, yeah.
The second Duke of Hazard, obviously Andrew. One of the most infamous storylines, I think, with our royals the last couple of years has been his alibi about the Pizza Express in Woking. And the BBC have done an investigation into this, and they've said, if I get the wording right on this, they found no evidence that he was at the Pizza Express, but also no evidence that he wasn't. And this is the alibi that he used to say that he wasn't with Virginia Giuffre on the night that photograph was taken.
It's all emerged, hasn't it, that Pizza Express, the company, has done their own due diligence and their own digging. But I don't know why it's taken so long for it all to kind of emerge, presumably because they kept it quiet. But it doesn't sort of prove or disprove the theory, frustratingly, one way or the other, because he said he was taking his daughter, didn't he, to a party there, and therefore couldn't have been in the same place at the same time on the same date as where Virginia Giuffre had placed him as part of her allegations. And he's always denied wrongdoing. But it's just interesting how this story just doesn't go away.
I know. I mean, obviously, I think that Pizza Express was trying to protect themselves. I'm sure that there was some crisis management meeting where they said, we might end up in court. We might end up having to provide security footage. Let's know what's coming down the pike. So I don't know if that is how this all came to fruition, but this has to have existed for quite some time. Why it's coming out, I don't know. And yes, this is a story that just won't go away. And if I'm King Charles and I'm flipping through the papers and I'm seeing Harry on one page and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor on the next, I'm thinking, why? Why is this happening under my watch?
Get in a tank.
Yeah,
better take my jacket off and get in a tank.
myself with my helmet.
Are you surprised that it took Pizza Express to get to the bottom of it? We haven't had the Met Police there, or the FBI, or any kind of lawyers, or the X-Files team going down there to find out what's gone on. It's Pizza Express have solved the mystery.
Let's get the FBI down to the Pizza Express in Woking. Come on, Kinsey, you can make that happen.
Let me just make one call. No, I guess I would expect nothing less, because it is, if the owners, I imagine, are wanting to protect that brand. I will say the only reason I've ever had it was because of his BBC interview. I was curious, so I ate
You've
it.
never had Pizza Express?
I had
Not one and only time at Pizza Express.
I went to Pizza Express.
It's a classy joint.
You'll have to treat Kinsey.
It's a good chain. Sorry, I'm not pushing them as to get any kind of freebies.
Other
but-
pizza
I
restaurants.
think you
are
should.
available.
I think
pizza
you
restaurants.
should be the next influencer. Move over Meghan Markle. Matt is posting Pizza Express #ads on his Instagram.
Yeah, no, genuinely, I think it's sad that Pizza Express has been attached to Andrew in many ways.
I like that they've owned it, though. It's quite a good marketing strategy,
Yeah.
isn't it?
He wasn't here.
He may or may not have been here.
Now, on weeks like this, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you kind of look up and think about, is there a God Almighty that can kind of help save what's going on, or bring some reason to everything that's happening?
I don't know, your football team
that's
keeps
deep.
winning.
But we'll get on to football in a minute, Kinsey. Thanks for that. So the King's official job has changed in many ways, or the actual title of his job. His job is now, correct me if I'm wrong here, because you were in the briefing, I was away watching the football, Kinsey, but you were in this briefing, I believe, the Sovereign Grant, where it's to protect the faith within the multi-faith nation. This has caused quite a consternation, particularly on my kind of Twitter or X timeline, where people are questioning the King's faith or Christianity, or questioning his kind of commitment. He's the supreme governor of the Church of England. Where do you sit with this?
Well, the King, I don't think this is any real surprise to me, because there was all this talk, wasn't there, when he was Prince of Wales, before he became King, about whether he would be defender of the faith, the Anglican faith, Church of England, or whether he would be defender of faith, more generally speaking. And actually, when he came to the throne, it was decided that he would be defender of the faith. So that was sort of put to bed. But as we know, for years he's been talking about interfaith relations. We had different heads of different faiths at the coronation service, although it was very much an Anglican service, traditional service. He's always sort of brought all different kind of religious leaders in. So I think that's interesting that they sort of rephrased sort of quite what he does within that, because we have these huge documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages to kind of leaf through, don't we, with figures and where the money's been spent and how it's been spent and what's being done behind the palace walls. And that was the kind of one of the interesting nuggets that came out there. So it just speaks to what he's, where he stands. I don't think that it questions his faith in the Anglican Church at all. But I think it just it's him throwing his arms open, really, to other religions. Does it matter, Kinsey? Because I hate going into the cesspit of X and comments, but I do see a lot of people, like in America, kind of saying, oh, King Charles is a Muslim. King Charles doesn't like Christianity anymore. Does it feed into that, which is complete nonsense? He's a spiritual man and he's interested in all religions and et cetera, stuff like that. But is it a danger that it feeds into that weird conspiracy theory? I mean, I think if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, we would all be like, inclusion is great. Unfortunately, what's going on politically here, I think, is negatively affecting the story when you have mass immigration and people feel like it's changing the culture and people are worried that Islam is taking over. That is really why he's being criticized for this. Otherwise, I think we might sit back and admire a man that wants to make sure no one feels left out, and he wants to acknowledge everyone, and he respects your faith and respects the way you choose to worship. I mean, I do think that that's an admirable quality, but unfortunately, with the politics the way they are, and with people worried about the direction of this country, I think he is getting more pushback than he would have several years ago. But I've gone to church with King Charles. We've worshipped together, singing the same hymns, saying the same prayers, and I've spoken to his church leaders, and they say he's fully committed to the church, and that he is a godly Christian man. So I'm personally not worried about it, and I try to ignore the noise. It's an example of him being we always thought he would be a reformer, or he would change things. It's an example of him just quietly being a change maker for his role. He's a convener as well, so less of a rebel, more of a kind of convener, bringing people together, bringing the different groups together. This is somebody who, at his Highgrove home, when you walk through the gardens, you can see a little chapel he's had built there, and he can go and worship on his own, and he goes to church, and he really, it is, like you say, he's a spiritual man. He's a spiritual man, but one thing apparently he doesn't worship, and that's football. Here we go. He doesn't seem segue. He doesn't seem to like the three lions. No, I'm quite tired. I don't know if you noticed. It's because a couple of days ago I stayed up all night to watch probably the greatest England performance of all time. So you didn't have a kit beforehand, and you didn't go to bed afterwards. You just did the whole. You just pulled an all-nighter. I couldn't sleep, and I did go out to watch England play in lovely Boston against Ghana, and I had a wonderful time out there. And we think William, patron of the FA, will go to the final when we ultimately get there and beat probably France. Maybe. But William was on a podcast, and this is Travis and Jason Kelsey. You can help us out here. New Heights. Travis married Taylor Swift on Friday last week. And it was so brilliant because this podcast dropped the day of their wedding. So the last I checked, over 1 million views. And it's my understanding that William and Catherine were invited to the wedding. It would not have been a good look for William to not go to the United States to celebrate 250. They had several commitments here that they didn't want to interrupt. It would have looked so poorly for them to be sitting next to, Bon Jovi at the Taylor and Travis wedding. So this was kind of a way for them to honor that friendship, acknowledge that invitation, a huge appearance on a very popular to begin with podcast, which is the Kelsey brothers, NFL football players. Travis has yet to retire. His brother is retired, but yes, married to Taylor Swift. It was a lot more bantery than I thought. I thought it was going to be about the wedding or be about Taylor Swift, but it was all about football. I don't know if you guys have been watching the football, but it was all about, the game and his love of the game, which we know William loves football. How many times have we gone on engagements and he mentions those? Aston Villa. His favourite team. Yeah. Of course, some of those Aston Villa fans are part of the England squad, aren't they? Yeah. So he's following it even more closely, perhaps, than he might. I think, we know that William likes football, and the Palace has kind of leaned into William's love of football as a kind of sign of him being a kind of an everyman folk, but he did throw his dad under the bus a little bit, didn't he, in the interview, because he said, my dad hates. They said, oh, did you get your love of football and your love of Aston Villa from your father or from your dad? And he said, oh no, my dad absolutely hates football, which I thought was like, oh, poor Charles, he doesn't really need that during the World Cup, and he's made quite a good fist of showing an interest, hasn't he, and becoming friends with David Beckham and asking him how the games are going and things in the past. So. He might not be the biggest fan, but at least they've got one in William. William can be the kind of, the England flag waver.
And Prince George, yeah.
Football's the King just doesn't strike me as a football man.
No, and I think that's fine.
This is fine.
I think that's fine. I think it's,
What do we call it, soccer, Kinsey?
Wait, you call it, I call it soccer.
You call it soccer. Yeah, so for American viewers, we're talking about the round ball, just in case we're confusing it.
For American viewers, it's like sports. Ew, that's a boys' thing.
Right.
Well, I just point out that the England women's team have won lots of tournaments.
Ah, that's true.
And we're still waiting. We've been waiting since 1966, I think, for the men's England football team to win the World Cup.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't want to win everything, It's more fun to kind of struggle and then once you win,
you feel it.
Rarely, it's much more fun. If you win every week, it's boring.
Ask Meghan Markle.
I was woken up, it was just after 4 a.m. the other day by my neighbours cheering, and obviously I was fast asleep. We've won.
Well, hopefully William will be going if we do get to the final, but it doesn't seem like he'll be taking his father.
No.
Right, we've just got time for our quickfire questions. So, as we were discussing there, Prince William appeared on the New Heights podcast this week. If he had a podcast, what should it be called?
I think he'd be called Villa Till I Die, which is one of the big Aston Villa wins. He put VTID, didn't he? And we were sort of going.
Well, Googled it. What's that?
You probably knew straight away because you're a footy fan. But I had to think about that for a while. Yeah, Villa Till I Die. And then every week he could interview a new footballer. He was talking about how much he liked Wayne Rooney, wasn't he? And then we can get him on, get David Beckham on. I'd listen to that. That'd be a great podcast.
I would listen to Prince William and Charlotte talk about being Swifties. I don't know what you would call that, though. I don't know what you would call that podcast. Sorry, guys.
You're the ideas person, don't worry.
I'm an ideas person. We'll get marketing on it.
Next question. So, Queen Camilla, as we mentioned earlier, was celebrating Winnie the Pooh this week. But which member of the royal family is most like Pooh Bear or other characters?
Well, obviously Harry's Eeyore. I don't think that there's any other option. He's always trying to find his tail, and he's always in a funk.
Well, someone actually described the king as Eeyore to me. Do you remember after the leaky pen incident when he first became king? And they said, well, he is obviously a bit of an Eeyore character. And I remember saying to someone at the palace, they call him Eeyore. They said, but Camilla brings out his inner Tigger.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
I said, well, I don't want to know any more about that.
That is the best line from the show.
If anything, Louis might be Tigger. I'm wondering.
Yeah, he'd be a great
so
Tigger.
Cute, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Bouncing around, lots of energy.
Or Christopher Robin or something. Yeah. Anyway, right, and finally, after becoming Pizza Express's most famous customer, what should they name a new pizza in tribute to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? I think this question comes with a health warning, but let's see if we can keep it clean and as tasteful as possible if you have any answers.
What do you think?
Meatless? I don't know. Sausage party?
Yeah, it would have to be a kind of a titleless one, wouldn't it? We wouldn't give it a name, but something with stuffed crust, I think, because he really, the last few years haven't been kind to him, have they?
Yeah. Or formally known as. Maybe they changed the name of the pizza and rebrand it and remove it. They've removed some toppings from it, renamed it. There you go. We kept that one clean. That's excellent. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. And as I say, it's going to be a long week, but thanks for joining us and telling us, what you think and keeping us up to date. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests Kinsey and Kate, and thanks to you for watching. And as always, remember to comment as well as subscribe to us here on our Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. See you next week.